So I see some questions in. So one question is for you, Dr. Rupp. Is this pause appropriate?
I think the pause is appropriate, and it's obviously being done to be very careful, to be very prudent, to carefully examine these cases in relationship to a possible association with the vaccine. So I do think this is appropriate, and I think that it's a demonstration that the vaccine adverse event reporting system really is working. And as I have related many times, when we give vaccines in clinical trials where we're testing it in tens of thousands of patients, it's an extremely rigorous testing regimen that we put these vaccines through. But if we have a very rare side effect or toxicity that might only be 1 in a million cases, we're not going to see that until we have some experience with the vaccine. And that may be exactly what's going on here, where we've had just a handful of these cases out of 7 million people who've been given the vaccine. We know of 6 cases that have now been described to the FDA. And so I do think it's appropriate that we put a brief pause on this, take a good close look at it, and then figure out how to best go forward.
And the next question may also be for you, Dr. Rupp. Can we get an update on the Nebraska Medicine patient?
I'm sorry, I'm really not at liberty to share individual patient information due to privacy concerns. So no, I really can't give an update on the condition of the patient here at Nebraska Medicine. I'm sorry.
And the next question, because this is such a rare event, is this an overreaction? And does this scare the public off from the vaccine and when their chances of getting the doses are so remote?
Well, I do think we need to steer a very careful course between being careful and being prudent, and not overreacting to the potential rare side effects. I do unfortunately think that no matter what we do at this point, this is going to reinforce vaccine hesitancy for a lot of people. But I would reinforce again that this is an extremely rare event. We're not seeing this with the mRNA vaccines, the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccines, and those have been administered now in tens of millions, over 100 million persons now throughout the United States. We are seeing a rare handful of cases out of 7 million that have this rare thrombotic condition, but it does bear enough similarity with the AstraZeneca vaccine and events in Europe that we need to take a close look at this. And then maybe very much like Europe, we decide that this vaccine is safe in a different population and try to avoid it in persons who may be at higher risk.
Thank you. The next question is, what's happening with the supply of the COVID-19 within the state, Douglas County, potentially the J&J vaccine, I think the question is. And I would just tell you, our vaccine is safely stored and it has an expiration date. And the expiration date, we just looked at it, it's June 23rd of this year. So we have quite some time for this. And by that, I'm sure we're going to have information from CDC. So,
Dr. Rupp?
Yes.
Julie Anderson here from the World Herald. Any thought on whether, do they know whether there's some sort of reaction going on to the adenovirus vaccine itself, or is it to heparin when it's been given to some of these patients?
So that's a very good question, Julie. And the phenomenon that we're seeing with the rare thrombotic event, so this is thrombus that's involving the venous sinuses that essentially drain the central nervous system, as well as some of the vessels in the splanchnic bed, which is what drains the intestines, are very rare. They do bear some similarities clinically with what we know as heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. So this is a condition that's induced by the administration of heparin that causes the platelets to fall to a dangerous level. and to have a prothrombotic condition where it promotes clotting. So it does look a lot like that clinically. And we do want clinicians to be aware of this phenomenon. So the warnings have gone out from public health, from the CDC, from our state and local health departments to all clinicians that they need to be on the lookout for this. So if they see a person who's had the J&J vaccine within the last 2 to 3 weeks and presents with severe headaches, severe abdominal pain, shortness of breath, leg swelling, that we look at this carefully. One of the things that needs to be emphasized is that these patients should not be treated with heparin, even though they may have some clotting, but rather other anticoagulants should be used. It's also recommended that intravenous immune globulin be administered. So the treatment for this is very, very different than heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. Heparin-induced thrombocytopenia is actually a fairly common phenomenon that we see in hospitalized patients that have received really any form of heparin. There are some clinical differences and some ways of making the diagnosis, but there are obviously some very clear differences in the way that we want to treat these patients. So Julia, thank you for your question, very astute. Clearly there's some differences between heparin-induced thrombocytopenia and what has been observed in this handful of cases after the J&J vaccine.
So the next question is, how many appointments do you anticipate this pause to impact in the state? And I would just tell you, I wouldn't know that for the state. I can tell you that we had planned potentially 4,000 doses for this week. Not all of the appointments have been full, but all of them have been informed by now. And then the next question, is there any concern regarding supply of Pfizer and Moderna if there is more demand pressure put on those remaining vaccines? You know, I think those vaccines are moving forward as quickly as possible. We have had more of Pfizer and Moderna so far. We are filling those appointments as quickly as the doses come in, and we'll just move forward with that. And I would just say again for everyone, if you have a chance to get a vaccine, get any vaccine that is really Pfizer or Moderna. Those are the best vaccines you can get at this time until we know further what is going on with J&J. So the next question, at what point does the benefit outweigh the risk with a vaccine? And should there be some tolerance to some risk in order to save the lives? And I see Dr. Rupp shake his head, and I would shake my head too and say, absolutely. And I let Dr. Rupp give his comments.
Well, thank you, Dr. Poor. I mean, obviously, any medication that is administered, any vaccine that is given is associated with some degree of side effect toxicity that are known. We clearly know the risk that's involved with COVID-19. We've had well over 500,000 people in our country die over this past year due to COVID-19. The risk factors for this are very clear. There are certain people that are at increased risk, but clearly this is a dangerous disease that even in young, healthy people can cause severe illness and can cause lingering symptoms that can go on for months. We also know that the vaccine is very effective. The mRNA vaccines that are widely used throughout the country with a 90 to 95% prevention of clinical illness and essentially 100% in preventing serious disease, hospitalization, and death. So the risk benefit for these vaccines clearly weighs in favor of getting the vaccine. Even if these rare thrombotic events prove to be associated with the J&J vaccine, they're on the order of 1 per million right now. So clearly we need to look at this. We need to be careful. We need to understand it. But the risk from 1 in a million compared to the risk of having severe COVID, again, favors giving the vaccine. So, our advisory committee on immunization practices, the FDA, the CDC, they will look very carefully at this information. If we see that it is, more pronounced in a certain population, we may see recommendations coming out to say, avoid those higher risk populations, and again, use it in people where the risk is going to be reduced, and further weigh in favor of giving the vaccine.
Thank you. The other question is, do people who have recently gotten the J&J vaccine need to be concerned? Should they be watching for symptoms? I would just say, if you have within the last 3 weeks, if you have received the vaccine, just listen to your body. And you heard the symptoms that Dr. Rupp has been explaining, severe headache, severe abdominal pain, leg swelling. I would say if you have those symptoms, you should contact your healthcare provider, and you should inform them about the symptoms and that you have been vaccinated. Dr. Rupp, anything else you want to add to that?
Those are exactly the instructions that I would give as well. If you've had vaccination within the last 2 to 3 weeks, you have any of those cardinal symptoms, then you should be contacting your healthcare provider. And then again, make sure that they're aware that the J&J vaccine has been administered.
And then the last question I have here is, what kind of education is happening at hospitals regarding the symptoms and treatments? And I can just tell you, a health alert network has just been sent to all the hospitals. And I think CDC just put out the health alert too for healthcare provider, how to recognize the symptoms. And Dr. Rupp may have something else to add on to it.
No, those official pronouncements from state and local health departments, as well as from the CDC, are widely distributed, going out to all doctors' offices and hospitals, and trying to get everybody well informed of this potential very rare but serious observation and side effect possibly related to the vaccine.
And the next question is, when can we expect more information regarding the J&J patient in question? Well, this is a HIPAA incident. So this is not a public health concern that we have. So this person has really all the right to its privacy. So I am not sure that we are going to get more information on the patient. Dr. Rupp, what are your thoughts?
I can make no further comments on the specifics of the patient, Dr. Poor, as you've related. This is protected by privacy laws, and I can just assure folks that, again, the case has been brought forward as appropriate. So public health, CDC, FDA are aware and have details so that they can evaluate this case in the context of the other cases that have been observed. But we will not be sharing any personal health information to the media or to the public.
So, okay, one question is, are there any other questions that people may have on Zoom? Okay, one of the questions, any changes with vaccine sites within Douglas County because of this pause? Potentially, we are looking at it, and we are looking at our supply that we have. It may be not so much a change in site, but we may have to cancel a smaller site. But at this time, it looks like we have enough vaccine available to move forward with the agenda that we have in place. I don't see any more questions. Are any more questions on the phone?
All right, it looks like we can wrap this up.
If not, I just want to say thank you for all who were on the Zoom, and special thanks to Dr. Rupp with his expertise to share with you all what he's seeing from his perspective. Again, I think this is out of abundance of caution that this was put in place by CDC and FDA. We all are looking forward to hear results from the review of those 6 cases and what the recommendations will be, and hopefully we will follow those recommendations. And with that, Dr. Rupp, anything else?
Yeah, if I could just make just a few closing remarks for the media, and that is that I think we're doing exactly the right thing, which is to put a brief pause on the J&J vaccination so that we can examine these cases and ascertain whether they're related to the vaccine, and if so, are there any modifications or precautions that need to be taken. Now, having said that, at the same time, we need to be pushing forward as aggressively as we possibly can with the mRNA vaccines. These have been proven to be highly effective and very safe. And we need to go forward with this because right now, as we speak, the number of cases and the number of variants to COVID-19 are rising through the state. In many places throughout the country, they're seeing major outbreaks with the variants. And you can look at the data from the CDC, from other sites, and see that there are many areas of the country that are starting to see this same rise in cases. And it's absolutely imperative that we continue to vaccinate as broadly and quickly as we possibly can with these proven safe and effective vaccines, while at the same time we continue the non-pharmacologic interventions, the distancing, the wearing of the masks, avoiding those high-risk sort of situations. And if we do these things together, we're going to have a much better, safer summer. So I really am concerned that these rare cases could result in increased vaccine hesitancy, and that would truly be disadvantageous to the rest of us and to the population as we try to battle these variants and get as much vaccination into the community. You know, it's really been characterized as a race between vaccination and the variants, and I think that's a pretty good characterization.
I agree with Dr. Rupp, and I would just say, I mean, this community has done really well. We have had sites all over the county, so people do not need to travel too far. They shouldn't have any barriers to get vaccinated. And I just encourage everybody to, I mean, vaccine is the only thing that is going to get us to some kind of normal again. So please look at this with the confidence that you have now, that everybody is really looking at it when there are rare adverse events, and we are not taking it lightly. But vaccines, the messenger RNA vaccines are safe vaccines, and I would encourage everybody to get vaccinated. So thank you all and have a good afternoon.